M. Night Shyamalan is back with apocalyptic psychological horror, Knock at the Cabin, and I think it's fair to say that his films could be quite divisive among audiences, and Knock at the Cabin is no exception. The film follows same-sex couple Andrew and Eric and their 7-year-old adopted daughter Wen. While vacationing at a holiday home in the middle of the woods, the family is targeted and held hostage by 4 strangers claiming that the fate of the world rests on their decision to willingly sacrifice one of their family members. I remember seeing the trailer for this one late last year when it dropped, and I actually filmed a reaction video for it, but I was just super excited. I love dark psychological films, and the premise for this one seemed very intriguing. Are the intruders telling the truth? Is it actually an attack? Rest assured, all is revealed in due course. In the cast, we have Ben Aldridge and Jonathan Groff playing Andrew and Eric, Kristen Q as their daughter Wen, and Dave Bautista as Leonard, the leader of the group of intruders. To kick off the review, I want to highlight 2 performances that I think deserve a mention, but before I go into this, I do just want to say that I think all the actors did a decent job with what they were given. I do think that there was a lack of character development, which I'll delve into deeper a bit later on in this review, but they all did a fine job with what they were given. My first mention goes out to Dave Bautista, who's really demonstrated his range as a serious actor in recent years. I recently saw Glass Onion and I really enjoyed him in that too. I think it's safe to say that he's come a long way from his WWE days, and that's not to throw any shade on WWE performers. I know that there's a lot of acting that goes into that whole universe, but I think for him particularly, he has really demonstrated that he can take on more than just action roles, and I think this film is the perfect example. His character Leonard is so reserved and just a gentle soul who exudes this pure energy. He's a total embodiment of the term gentle giant, this massive mountain of a man covered head to toe with tattoos, but it's just the cadence of his voice and the deep, sad look in his eye that just made his performance just feel so genuine and just so wholesome. His whole demeanor is a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders, quite literally, and his performance conveyed this to a T. Another standout for me personally was Rupert Grint playing Redman, one of the intruders who is particularly hostile and just a terrible person in general. I'm a massive Potterhead, so seeing Ron Weasley in this acting in the manner that he was pretty shocking, and I loved every minute of it. He also put in an American accent for the role, which I thought he did pretty well. But I think Pete Davidson put it best when he said, "Seeing Ron Weasley being a complete piece of shit was like porn for me." I completely share that sentiment. Something I really enjoyed about the film is that it just jumps straight into it. There's no messing around. You're just thrown into it just as the intruders start to arrive. So it feels really fast-paced, and that pace carries on throughout the film. It hooks you in from the get-go, and apart from the odd choice to do these really tightly framed close-ups for pretty much the entire first sequence, which was admittedly pretty distracting, I did think it was a very strong opening. I also thought the film did an excellent job of building tension and a suspenseful atmosphere. It definitely puts you in the shoes of the characters, and it's super intense and just a mindfuck of a situation. The tone of the film is very dark, which I thought was very effective, and there's also some really creepy, disturbing imagery in terms of the weaponry that they're using. There's also some other visually disturbing moments, which I won't delve into here just to avoid any spoilers, but I thought that it was done really well. In terms of violence, I think it's pretty tame. Like, if you're not a fan of blood and gore, I think you can feel at ease going into this. It's pretty reserved, and most of, if not all, of the intense violence is done off screen, but the mood is very grim and bleak still. So before I move on, Knock at the Cabin is an M. Night Shyamalan film, so I have to talk about the M. Night factor. For fans of his work, there's 2 things that you can pretty much guarantee will be in an M. Night Shyamalan film. The first being a cameo from the director himself, and the second being a pretty shocking twist ending. While I can confirm that we do indeed get a cameo from the director, I really don't think that there was a twist ending. In fact, the film pretty much plays out in a way that you would expect. The ending is not, I guess, unexpected, and it's also not that great either. And to this point, this segues into my criticisms of the film. Although I generally enjoyed watching this film, it was pretty clear that the story and the characters were lacking depth and development. In terms of the characters, I really didn't care that much for the family, which is a problem because essentially they're the foundation of the film. I don't think we're given enough from them or about them to make the stakes feel that high. Although I enjoyed how the film just jumped straight into things like I mentioned before, this also worked against it in a way because we don't really have a connection to the family. We're not given an opportunity to get to know them. The only real insight we have is in the form of a couple of flashbacks, but ultimately it's not enough to feel impactful. When it comes to the story, I think it works well in a shallow sense, but as soon as you start digging deeper, there's just so many questions left unanswered. The movie's climax in particular is really abrupt and feels pretty messy. The scene where all is revealed just feels like it comes out of nowhere, and we're force-fed a bunch of exposition to explain what's happened, and it just feels lazy. Expanding on this point, Knock at the Cabin was adapted from Paul Tremblay's novel Cabin at the End of the World. Although I haven't personally read the book myself, I had a look into how it all plays out, and it seems like it stays pretty true to the novel, the film does, but it's at the end where it completely diverges from the source material. The biggest difference seems to be in the definitive way that the film ends, whereas in Paul Tremblay's book, it is more open-ended and ambiguous. Although Paul Tremblay has been quoted being pretty positive about the change to the ending, I did see a tweet that he put out in response to a question asking if there were alternative endings filmed, and his tweet said, "That was the only ending filmed. The ending in my book is what I prefer." I really think that I would have enjoyed this film way more if it had ended the same way that the book did. It sounds like it was a change to appeal to a broader audience, which I understand. The film has to make money. The book ending is very dark and very depressing, but I do feel like it was a missed opportunity to make something really great, even if it isn't for everyone. Although I wasn't a fan of how the film ended, I did think the final scene was very touching, and it did hit me right in the feels. Overall, Knock at the Cabin was an enjoyable film which hooks you in right at the get-go and keeps you engaged throughout the entire runtime. It's fast-paced and very dark and tense, but as a whole, I think it just missed the mark. I share similar feelings with this one as I did with Old, although I do think that this one was the better film. I enjoyed the journey, but the big reveal and the ending were a bit of a disappointment. I don't think it's a film that I'll revisit again anytime soon, but if you haven't seen it yet, I do think it's definitely worth the watch. I gave Knock at the Cabin a 6 out of 10. I hope you guys enjoyed my review. If you've seen Knock at the Cabin, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. It seems like it's getting a pretty positive reception, which is really cool to see. I am a fan of M. Night Shyamalan. I feel like you're never going to be bored in one of his films. It's just some are a little bit sillier, or I guess the ending is where it can really go sideways. But all in all, it was a fine film. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.